Hello, my friend. The world of magic, filled with legends and ancient tales, is opening its gates once again. Tonight, in the Gryffindor dormitory by the crackling fireplace, I will share another story with my friends. Join us, for the magic is about to come alive.
The night was old and still when the whisper began in the corridors of Gringotts Wizarding Bank. Down beneath the marble floors and Goblin Run counters where gold gleamed like caged sunlight, something ancient stirred. It was not the kind of stirring that came from thieves or treasure seekers. No, this was deeper, older. The kind of movement that came from a vault long sealed and never meant to be opened. A low, trembling hum echoed through the caverns, sending goblin guards running with lanterns in hand. "Vault 701, one of them hissed. "It's open." When they reached it, the air was thick with green mist, and in that mist lay two wizards. Unspeakables from the Department of Mysteries. Motionless, their eyes wide, their wands clutched tight. The goblins did not need to check for life. They knew that light, that green glow. Avada Kedavra. By dawn, the news had reached the Ministry of Magic, and by breakfast it had reached the man who never wanted to hear those words again. Harry Potter sat at his kitchen table, his mug of tea cooling as an owl tapped insistently on the window. Ginny looked up from the Daily Prophet. "Harry," she said quietly, "it's for you." He broke the seal on the parchment, read the message once, then again. "Department of Mysteries requests your presence. Urgent matter concerning Vault 701 Gringotts. Suspected use of the killing curse." Harry closed his eyes. He could almost see the flash of green again, hear his mother's scream echo through time. "I have to go," he said, standing. Ginny didn't stop him. She knew that tone. It was the one he used when the past refused to stay buried. By the time he arrived at the ministry, the air was heavy with secrecy. Even the elevators whispered less than usual. Hermione Granger met him just outside the Auror office, a stack of files pressed to her chest. "You heard?" she asked. "I got the owl," Harry replied. "What happened?" "They were investigating an ancient vault that hadn't been opened in over 1,000 years. Belonged to someone named Ashkar Morven. Ever heard of him?" Harry shook his head. Hermione hesitated, lowering her voice. "The curse that killed them. It wasn't cast by anyone there. There were no signs of another presence. The vault itself released it." Harry frowned. "A vault doesn't kill people?" "That's what we thought." She led him through the Department of Mysteries, past the swirling blue time rooms and the whispering prophecies, until they reached a sealed chamber. Inside, on a table under magical stasis, rested a single scroll. It was blackened with age, its letters pulsing faintly like veins under skin. The writing shimmered in a language neither Latin nor runic, something older, darker. "The Unspeakables translated a few lines before they died," Hermione said softly. "It mentioned the word that ends life and the mouth that speaks death into being." Harry stared at it. The air around the scroll seemed alive, humming faintly with restrained violence. "Someone made the killing curse," he murmured. "Someone created it." Hermione nodded. "And we think this scroll is where it began." Before Harry could reply, a new voice spoke from the doorway, calm, sharp, and edged with curiosity. "You're correct, Mr. Potter. Every spell has a birth, even the darkest ones." The speaker was a tall witch with silver-streaked hair tied in a loose braid, her robes ink-stained from years of study. Her eyes, however, were bright and alert, a mind always at work. Professor Thelma Vane, Hermione introduced. She's the leading expert on pre-Founders magic. The department called her in to help. Vane approached the scroll, studying it through thin spectacles. This language predates anything we've seen, possibly even before Merlin's age. Whoever wrote it wasn't inventing evil, Mr. Potter. They were searching for power beyond the reach of life and death. Harry folded his arms. Sounds like Voldemort's kind of reading material. Vane gave a wry smile. Perhaps, but this came long before him. The name Ashkar Morven has been whispered in the oldest magical records, a man who lived when magic itself was raw and untamed. Some say he sought to heal death. Others say he tried to command it. And what do you say? Hermione asked. Vane's eyes flicked toward the scroll. I say he succeeded, at least once. The silence that followed was heavy. Harry felt something cold brush his skin, not from the air, but from the memory of every green flash he'd ever seen. So what now? He asked quietly. We trace the spell's origin, Vane said. If this truly is Morven's work, then his resting place, or his last experiments, may still lie hidden. And if the vault's magic has awakened, someone might be trying to use it. Hermione looked uneasy. You think someone broke into the vault on purpose? Vane's smile was faint. Oh, Miss Granger, nothing ancient ever awakens by accident. As they turned to leave, the scroll shuddered. The lights flickered, and for a heartbeat, green mist rose from the table. Harry's scar, long faded and silent for years, burned. He froze. Thelma Vane saw it too. Her eyes widened, and she whispered one word, barely audible beneath the hum of the wards. Impossible. But the hum deepened, almost a heartbeat now, and the ancient scroll began to whisper back. A language no one living should have understood. A tongue older than Parseltongue. And Harry Potter, against his will, understood every word. The echo of that whisper haunted Harry for nights. It came in his dreams first, words too old to belong to human tongues, curling like smoke through his mind. When he woke, the air felt charged, as if thunder were waiting just outside the window. He tried to shake it off, telling himself it was memory playing tricks. But memory had never burned like that. His scar had not hurt in years, not since Voldemort's fall, and yet the pain had returned, faint, like a ghost, pressing against the edge of the living world. Hermione noticed first. You're hearing something, aren't you? She asked one morning in her office at the Ministry. Papers floated around her, quills scratching on their own. Harry hesitated. It's more like remembering something I never learned. She frowned. That scroll was sealed by more than goblin wards. It may have touched your mind when you heard it. He sighed. And you think it left something behind? I think, Hermione said softly, it's trying to be remembered. Before they could speak further, the fireplace flared green. Out stepped Thelma Vane, clutching a worn leather tome. I found him, she announced. Ashkar Morven, or what's left of his legend. She spread the book open across Hermione's desk. The pages were brittle, the ink faded to rust brown. Sketches of runes, diagrams of human hearts intertwined with lightning bolts and serpent shapes filled the margins. In the age before the Founders, Vane said, tracing a line with her finger, there were no unforgivable curses. Magic was still wild, ungoverned. Spells were born of need, not law.
Oshkar Morven was a healer, or so the records claim, but when the Black Fever swept through the northern settlements, he sought a way to end suffering altogether, to command death, not cure it. Hermione leaned forward. You mean he tried to create a mercy spell? Vane nodded. A word that would stop the heart instantly, without pain. A final kindness. Harry's jaw tightened, and it became the killing curse. Not at first, Vane said. Morven wrote that his first attempts only silenced animals. Then, when he turned it upon himself, it failed. The curse refused him. It sought life to take, not life to surrender. He realized he had created something that demanded power to feed on, not peace to give. Hermione shuddered. He weaponized compassion. Vane closed the tome. He disappeared soon after. Some say he sealed his research away in the deep earth, beneath the great halls of an unnamed stronghold. That may be what Gringotts uncovered. Not gold, but guilt. There was a pause. Then Harry said, "We need to see where he died." Vane smiled thinly. "Already ahead of you, Mr. Potter. The oldest map of magical Britain shows one mark no historian could ever identify. A ruin older than Hogwarts itself. A cave system hidden beneath the Highlands. Its name carved in half-erased runes reads Morvenhall. They set out the next dawn. The sky hung low and gray, the Scottish hills veiled in fog. Harry, Hermione, and Vane moved by broom until the land grew too rugged to fly. From there they walked, cloaks drawn tight against the wind. The entrance was not a ruin as they expected, but a lake. The water was dark as obsidian, the air heavy with silence. Only a single standing stone marked the shore, carved with the faint remains of an ancient crest, a serpent devouring its own tail. An Ouroboros, Hermione murmured, a symbol of eternity. Vane's eyes glinted. Or of death reborn? They set up a charm to repel the cold and cast a spell of illumination. The water shimmered green. Beneath the surface, the faint outline of an archway could be seen, stone steps descending into the deep. "It's a gateway," Harry said. "Then we'll need gillyweed," Hermione replied, producing 3 small bundles. The taste was as unpleasant as ever, but within moments their skin tingled and they dove into the lake. The descent was long, the light from their wands dimming as they swam deeper. Then the darkness broke. An underwater tunnel opened before them, vast and perfectly carved. They swam through, emerging into a chamber where the air was dry and ancient. Torches ignited on their own as they surfaced, their green fire reflecting off walls lined with strange symbols. At the center stood an altar, not of worship, but of experiment. Cracked vials, petrified parchment, and the remains of something that might once have been a wand lay scattered. Vane approached first, reverent as if entering a temple. This is it, his workshop. Hermione knelt beside the altar, tracing her wand over the stone. There's residual enchantment here, powerful but decayed. Harry's gaze was drawn to the far wall, where something glimmered beneath centuries of dust. He brushed it clean and froze. It was a mirror, but its surface was dull, warped. Beneath it, etched in the same ancient script as the scroll, were words that made his pulse quicken. To end pain, I gave it a name. Vane's breath caught. The invocation of Avada Kedavra. As she spoke the words aloud, the mirror shimmered. For an instant, a man's reflection appeared, tall, robed in tattered green, his eyes hollow and sad. Hermione stepped back. Is that...
Morven, Vane whispered, or what's left of him. The reflection moved, though no one else did. His voice came faint, like a memory pressed between stone. Who seeks my sin? Harry lifted his wand. We're not here to harm you. We're here to understand. Morven's face twisted. Understand? The world cursed my mercy and named it murder. The spell was never meant to kill. It was meant to free. The torches flared brighter, shadows dancing like ghosts. You mean Avada Kedavra was created to release souls? Hermione asked. To unbind them, the Phantom said. But when men learned the word, they stripped it of mercy. They spoke it with anger, with greed. And death answered their hearts. Harry's stomach turned cold. Then it wasn't the spell that was evil. It was the intent behind it. Morven's eyes burned faintly green. Every spell is a mirror, young wizard. What you bring to it, it returns. But beware. There are those who would seek to perfect what I began, to forge death into something that devours even the soul. As his image began to fade, the mirror cracked. A rush of magic surged through the chamber, and the lake trembled above them. Hermione cried out, "Harry, the water!" He turned just in time to see the archway they had entered through collapse in a roar of stone and spray. They were trapped beneath the lake, and the last echo of Ashkar Morven's voice whispered through the crumbling air. "The one who awakens my work walks among you." Then the chamber went dark. Darkness swallowed the chamber whole. The rush of collapsing stone gave way to silence, so deep it felt alive. For a moment, the only sound was the echo of their breathing. Fast, ragged, too loud in the suffocating dark. Hermione whispered, "Lumos," and her wand flared to life, casting a pale light over the ruin. Dust drifted through the air like ghostly snow. The mirror was gone, shattered into 100 shards that shimmered faintly as if still holding fragments of the vision they had seen. "The tunnel's gone," Harry said, turning toward the sealed archway. His wand light caught nothing but smooth rock. "We're trapped." "Not trapped," Thelma Vane murmured, kneeling beside the altar. "Merely redirected." Hermione blinked. Redirected? Ancient builders favored magic that shifted space rather than destroyed it. When the chamber collapsed, it didn't bury us. It moved us. Vane pressed her hand against the wall, muttering an incantation under her breath. The runes along the stone flickered one after another, like embers coming back to life. "Moved us where?" Harry asked. The wall rippled. Slowly, a door took shape, not carved, but born out of shadow and light. Vane stood. "To the next part of Morven's hall. I suspect he never meant for visitors to leave easily." Hermione looked wary, but nodded. "We've come this far." Harry led the way, stepping through the doorway into a passage that wound downward like the throat of a mountain. The air grew colder, and a faint green glow pulsed along the walls. It reminded him of the light that had haunted his nightmares, the same deadly hue that had once marked his fate. They walked in silence until the tunnel opened into another cavern, smaller but strangely beautiful. The walls were covered in runes that shimmered like dew, and at the center stood a stone basin filled with still water. Hermione approached it first. "It looks like a pensive." Vane nodded. "Older, much older. This is a memory well. A predecessor to the pensive, used to store fragments of thought and soul. Only the most powerful wizards could create one." She dipped her wand into the basin. The water stirred, and images began to swirl. Blurred faces, flashes of green light, a man kneeling over a dying figure. The man was Ashkar Morven. He was younger here than in the mirror, his expression wild with desperation. His voice came faint but clear, like a whisper carried on wind. "I sought to end pain," he said, "to give the dying peace, but the word does not obey mercy. It answers only power." The image shifted. Morven stood before a group of robed figures, arguing, pleading. "You twist my creation," he cried. "You make it murder." One of the others raised a wand and spoke a word that made Harry's skin crawl. Avada Kedavra. A blast of green light struck Morven in the chest. He fell, but did not die. Instead, he laughed, a sound half mad, half triumphant. "You cannot kill the one who named death," he whispered. The vision dissolved into mist. Hermione's face had gone pale. "He survived the killing curse." Harry stared at the basin. "Then he made himself the first to defy it before me." Thelma Vane's eyes gleamed with terrible fascination. That would explain why his power endured, even through centuries. He bound himself to death itself. The ground trembled beneath them. A faint vibration ran through the cavern, shaking the runes. From the far wall, a line of green fire began to crawl upward, carving symbols that none of them recognized. "What's happening?" Hermione asked. Vane's voice was grim. "Something has awakened." The symbols flared brighter, forming an arch of light. Through it, a shadow took shape. Not human, not ghost, but something in between. It spoke in the same ancient tongue that had whispered to Harry in the Department of Mysteries. "Who breaks the silence of Morven's rest?" Harry raised his wand. "We seek truth." The shadow moved closer, its edges flickering like torn smoke. "Truth is the sharpest curse of all. Speak your intent." Hermione took a breath. "We wish to know who has awakened Morven's magic. Someone broke into his vault at Gringotts. Someone is trying to use the spell again." The shadow hesitated, then pointed one long, wavering hand at Harry. "The echo lies within him." Harry felt a sudden weight in his chest, a pulse of energy, deep and rhythmic, matching the faint burning of his scar. "Within me?" Vane's expression changed. "The scroll spoke to you. It marked you as its vessel." Before he could respond, the green light flared so bright it blinded them. The next instant, the shadow was gone, and the runes went dark again. When their vision cleared, something lay on the floor. A shard of the broken mirror, glowing softly. Harry bent to pick it up. As his fingers touched the surface, the glow brightened, and words appeared, written in light. "The voice that shaped the curse has found a new tongue." Hermione stared. "It's using you to speak, Harry." He looked at the shard, his reflection rippling across it, but it wasn't his reflection anymore. Behind his eyes glowed faint green light, like embers beneath glass. "I can hear it again," he said quietly. "The language from the scroll.
It's clearer now."
"Don't listen to it,"
Hermione warned. "It's trying to feed on your magic." But the whisper came stronger now, curling around his thoughts, threading through his heartbeat. The words were neither cruel nor kind, only ancient, sorrowful, commanding. "Finish what was begun." Thelma Vane's voice broke through the silence. "We need to leave this place. The curse isn't dormant, it's alive. It's binding itself to you." They turned back the way they came, but the passage had changed. The walls pulsed faintly, shifting like living flesh. "We're being herded," Hermione said. "The structure's alive, reacting to your presence, Harry." He swallowed hard. "Then let's hope it wants us out." But the tunnel did not lead upward. It wound deeper, until they entered a vast hall carved with symbols that pulsed in time with Harry's heartbeat. In the center stood a stone figure, massive and cloaked, its face hidden beneath a hood. Vane's breath caught. A sentinel, one of the old magical guardians. Morven must have left it to protect his legacy. As they approached, the statue's eyes flared green. Its stone arm lifted, and the sound of grinding rock filled the air. "Speak the word of release," it commanded. Hermione glanced at Harry. "Don't say it. Whatever it's asking for, it's dangerous." But the whisper in Harry's mind rose again, urgent, compelling. He could feel the ancient power thrumming beneath the words, the same rhythm that had once shaped death itself. He closed his eyes, fighting it. Then, with a voice not entirely his own, he spoke, "Avada Kedavra." The hall shook as the spell burst forth, not as a curse of death, but as a surge of blinding light. The statue shattered into dust, the walls rippled, and suddenly all was still again. Harry fell to his knees, gasping for breath. Hermione rushed to his side, gripping his arm. "Harry, what did you do?" He opened his eyes. They were clear again, no trace of green. "I think," he whispered, "I said it the way it was first meant to be said." Vane stared at him, pale and trembling. "You just cast the original form of the killing curse, and it didn't kill. It freed something." From the shadows, a faint voice echoed, gentle, almost grateful. "Mercy." At last. And then the darkness receded, revealing a spiral stairway leading upward toward faint daylight. They had survived Morven's hall. But as Harry looked back one last time, the shard of mirror in his pocket pulsed once more, faintly but alive, as if something inside it was breathing. The climb back to the surface felt endless. The spiral stairs twisted through the rock, like the spine of some long-dead creature, narrow and steep, their steps carved by hands that had not known daylight in 1,000 years. The air was heavy with damp stone and the faint scent of ancient magic, a metallic tang that clung to their throats. When at last they reached the end, it was not open sky that met them, but a great wooden door bound in iron. Strange symbols glowed faintly across its surface, circles within circles, each carved so deep that their edges shimmered with green fire. Hermione stepped forward, wand raised. "This warding, it's not like anything I've seen. It's layered, protective, but alive." Thelma Vane's voice came soft and reverent. "Morven's final seal. It was said he locked his legacy behind a door that could only be opened by the one who understood his sin." Harry felt the shard of mirror in his pocket throb once like a heartbeat. He placed a hand on the door. The glow brightened, the symbols shifting as though recognizing him. "It knows me," he murmured. Hermione's brow furrowed. "Because you spoke the original curse, you've become the key." Before she could stop him, Harry pressed his palm flat against the wood. The symbols flared green, then white. The door groaned and swung open, releasing a breath of cold air that smelled of dust and forgotten years. Beyond lay a vast chamber, now not stone this time, but marble, polished and gleaming beneath a ceiling lost to darkness. Candles floated in the air, burning with blue flames. Books lined the walls, scrolls piled high upon tables. At the center of the room stood a crystal pedestal, and upon it a single orb glowed faintly, green at its core, rimmed with gold. Vane's voice trembled with awe. "The heart of Kedavra." Hermione turned sharply. "What is that?" "The last vessel of Morven's power," Vane said. "Legend said he poured the essence of the curse into a living stone, half soul, half spell. It's
It's what allowed the killing curse to exist in the world. That," she pointed to the orb, "is the source." Harry took a step closer. The orb pulsed faintly as though it felt his presence. Each beat echoed in his chest, answering the rhythm of his scar. Hermione caught his arm. "Don't touch it. We don't know what it can do." But it was too late. The orb began to hum, a deep, resonant sound that filled the chamber. The books on the shelves trembled, parchment fluttering like wings. From the shadows at the far end of the hall, a figure emerged. At first, Harry thought it was another vision, another echo of Ashkar Morven. But the man who stepped into the light was younger, his robes immaculate, his eyes burning with a familiar, unnatural green. "Well done, Potter," the man said softly. "You found it for me." Hermione's breath caught. "Who are you?" The stranger smiled. "Elias Morven, the last of Ashkar's bloodline." Vane stepped back, stunned. "That's impossible. His line was broken centuries ago." "Broken?" Elias's smile deepened. "No. Hidden. We were hunted, accused of dark arts, blamed for the curse that others corrupted. But I have restored what my ancestor began. And you," he looked at Harry, "you have brought me the key to finish it." Hermione raised her wand. "We won't let you." Elias did not move. He merely lifted his hand. The orb flared, and Hermione's wand flew from her grasp as if yanked by invisible cords. The blue candles guttered out, plunging the chamber into shadow. "You don't understand," Elias said calmly. "Ashkar Morven did not wish for death to conquer life. He wished to free the soul from suffering. I will perfect his work. I will make Avada Kedavra into what it was meant to be, not a curse, but a cure." Harry stepped forward, his own wand raised. "A cure that kills is still murder." Elias's eyes glowed brighter. "Not if it ends pain, not if it erases the agony of existence itself. Imagine it, Potter. No fear, no grief, no memory of loss. Just silence." He turned toward the orb. "The heart answers to blood. Morven's blood." He pressed his palm to its surface. Light burst outward in a shock wave that sent papers and books flying. The orb rose into the air, spinning, its green core expanding, until the entire chamber was awash in color. Harry shielded his eyes. "Hermione!" he shouted. "I'm fine," she yelled back, "but he's channeling it. Look!" Elias's body was wreathed in green light now, his features twisting as if fighting something unseen. "It's too strong," he gasped, though his voice was half laughter. "He fought it once, but I will master it." Harry could feel the ancient whisper again, curling in his mind. "Stop him," it urged. "The word must not live beyond its name." Vane's voice rang out, desperate. "Destroy the orb. It holds the curse itself." Harry aimed his wand at the spinning sphere. "Reducto!" The spell struck. The light cracked, but instead of breaking, the orb split open like an eye. A blast of energy threw him backward. When he looked up, Elias was gone. Only the orb remained, dim now, its glow flickering weakly. Hermione ran to Harry's side. "Are you all right?" He nodded, dazed. He vanished. Vane examined the pedestal, her hands trembling. No, not vanished. Merged. He's become part of it. The orb pulsed once faintly. Within its depths, a shadowed figure moved, its face indistinct but unmistakably human. Elias Morven's voice echoed from within. "You can destroy my body, Potter, but not the word. The word endures." The orb cracked again, light spilling from the fractures. The chamber trembled violently. Hermione shouted, "It's going to collapse. We have to go." They ran, dodging falling stone and splintering shelves. Behind them, the orb's light swelled until it filled every corner of the hall. Then, with a sound like thunder, it imploded. The world went white. When the light faded, they stood once more at the edge of the lake. The morning sun was breaking through the mist, the water calm as glass. Hermione coughed, looking around in disbelief. "It brought us back." Vane sank to her knees beside the water, exhausted. The orb's destruction must have released the spatial binding. We're lucky to be alive. Harry stared at his reflection in the lake. The faintest trace of green flickered in his eyes, gone before he could be sure it was there. Hermione touched his shoulder. "It's over." He wasn't so sure. From deep beneath the lake, a single ripple spread across the surface, and in the faint whisper of the wind, Harry thought he heard a voice, soft, distant, and unbearably familiar. The word endures. He turned toward the mountains, the cold breeze lifting his cloak. Somewhere far away, a shadow had escaped, and Harry Potter knew the curse's story was not yet done. 3 days had passed since the lake swallowed the ruins of Morven's Hall, yet the memory lingered like smoke that refused to fade. Harry sat alone in the small study of his home in Godric's Hollow, the evening light slanting gold through the window. The air was quiet, too quiet, save for the ticking of an old clock and the faint rustle of the wind outside. He could not rest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Elias Morven's face. That wild, rapturous expression as the orb consumed him. "The word endures," he'd said. The phrase echoed like a curse through Harry's thoughts. The shard of mirror lay on the desk before him, dull and lifeless now. But he could not bring himself to throw it away. Part of him feared what might happen if he did. Part of him feared what might happen if he didn't. A gentle knock broke his thoughts. Ginny stepped into the room, her expression soft but searching. "You haven't slept," she said quietly. Harry managed a faint smile. "You sound like Hermione." "She's right," Ginny replied. "Whatever happened under that lake, it's still with you. I can see it." He hesitated. "It's not over. I can feel something moving somewhere out there. The curse isn't gone." Ginny's eyes darkened. "You think Elias survived?" "Not in body, but in some form." He glanced at the mirror shard. He bound himself to the curse. It's what Morven tried to do centuries ago. Only Elias finished it. Ginny placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then you'll stop him, like you always do." He wished he shared her certainty. At dawn the next day, an owl from the ministry arrived, bearing the seal of the Department of Mysteries. The letter was brief, the handwriting sharp and hurried, urgent. Residual magical activity detected at multiple sites. Same energy signature as Gringotts incident. Request immediate assistance. H.G. Harry was already on his feet before he finished reading. By midday, he and Hermione stood once more in the ministry's lower halls, joined by Thelma Vane, her robes dusted with chalk and ash. On the table before them lay several parchment maps, covered in glowing symbols. Hermione tapped one with her wand. "These are the readings. Every one of them matches the energy from the heart of Kadavra. They appeared 2 nights ago, scattered across Britain." Harry frowned. "How many?" 6, she said, "all remote, old magical sites. Places of power. Stone circles, barrows, ruins. Something's awakening in each of them." Vane's expression was grim. "He's spreading it. Elias must have fractured the curse before the orb collapsed. Each fragment now seeks to root itself in places that can sustain ancient magic. Harry studied the map. The sites formed a pattern, a circle stretching from Cornwall to the Highlands. He's recreating something, a ritual. Hermione nodded. A circle of convergence. If he completes it, the curse could take physical form again. Not just words, but presence. It could make death sentient. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Harry said, "We stop him before the last sight awakens." Their first stop was in the north, an ancient hill crowned by standing stones older than Hogwarts itself. The locals called it the Whispering Ring. The sky was iron gray as they approached, rain sweeping in from the moors. The moment they crossed the outer stones, the world changed. The air thickened, sounds dulled. Each stone vibrated faintly, humming with the same low tone Harry had heard in Morven's vault. Hermione raised her wand, muttering detection spells. "It's here." The same signature, but unstable. Vane crouched near one of the stones, brushing away moss to reveal faint carvings beneath. The runes are reacting, feeding off the remnants of the curse. Harry felt it before they saw it. A faint tug, like invisible threads drawing him forward. At the center of the circle, the earth glowed faintly green. He could almost hear a voice beneath the rain, whispering, pleading. "Harry," Hermione asked. He knelt, touching the wet soil. "It's calling to me." Vane's eyes widened. "Then it recognizes you as part of itself. That may be the only way to contain it." The whisper grew louder, forming words he barely understood. "Speak the ending. Undo the breath that birthed the word." Harry closed his eyes. The language came to him unbidden, ancient syllables that tasted of metal and storm. He spoke them aloud, his voice low and steady. The glow flared, wind roared through the stones, and the earth trembled. Then just as suddenly the light vanished. The hum ceased. Hermione exhaled shakily. "You did it. One sight neutralized." Vane's tone was cautious. 5 remain, but he'll know now. The curse is aware of interference. Over the next 2 days, they moved swiftly, from moor to marsh, from forest to ruin. At each site, they found traces of the same power, woven into earth and air like invisible veins, and at each, Harry used the ancient tongue to still it, though each attempt left him weaker, paler, more hollowed. By the time they reached the 5th site, an abandoned abbey in the Cotswolds, even Hermione looked afraid for him. "You're burning yourself out," she said, as he wiped blood from his nose. Harry forced a smile. "I've done worse." "Not like this," she whispered. "This isn't just magic, Harry. It's drawing from your life." He didn't deny it. Every time he spoke the words of unmaking, he felt something in him falter, as though the curse demanded a toll. But he couldn't stop. Not yet. When the 5th site fell silent, the air itself seemed to pause. A stillness settled over the countryside, heavy and expectant. Vane unfolded the final map. "The last site lies where the circle began, the Highlands beneath the lake." Hermione's face drained of color. "Morven's Hall?" Vane nodded. "Or what remains of it. If the final fragment anchors there, the circle will complete itself. He will rise." They returned to the lake at dusk. Mist rolled thick over the water, and the mountains loomed dark and watchful. The standing stone still marked the shore, its Ouroboros carving faintly aglow. Hermione cast a protection charm over the camp. "We go at first light," but Harry couldn't wait. Something stirred beneath the lake. A faint, rhythmic pulse like a heartbeat, matching his own. He knew what it meant. He's already begun, he said quietly. If we wait, it'll be too late. Vane's expression was grim. Then we go now. They took gillyweed once more and dove into the depths. The cold bit into them like teeth, but the light below was unmistakable, green and gold pulsing through the ruins. The hall had changed. Where once had been stone and silence, now rose pillars of living magic, twisting upward like vines. And at the center, suspended above the cracked pedestal, hung the heart of Cadavra, whole again. Hermione gasped. It reformed itself. A voice echoed through the chamber, deep and resonant. No, it said, I reformed it. Elias Morven stepped from the shadows, his body no longer flesh but light and smoke intertwined, his eyes burning with emerald fire. You tried to unmake me, Potter, but death cannot be undone. It only transforms. Harry raised his wand. Then let's see if it can be contained. The light of the orb swelled, and the chamber shook. Water crashed through the ceiling. Lightning crackled beneath the surface. Elias smiled, spreading his arms. Speak the word, if you dare. But know this. Every time you use it, it loves you more. The curse's whisper filled Harry's mind, sweet and suffocating. Join me. Become what you were born to end. He closed his eyes, raised his wand, and spoke. Not the killing word, but its opposite, the one Morven himself had failed to complete. A word of mercy, a word of release. The green light shuddered and fractured, and then burst outward in a column of white fire that pierced the dark waters above. When it cleared, Elias was gone, the orb too. Only silence remained. Hermione reached him, gasping. Harry, are you... He nodded weakly. It's finished. But as they rose toward the fading light above, Thelma Vane glanced down, her eyes wide with dawning horror. For deep in the ruins below, where the heart had shattered, tiny sparks still burned, countless and scattered, drifting away like embers into the dark. And far above, unseen in the night sky, a faint green star flickered into being. The morning after their return from the lake broke cold and windless. The clouds hung low over London, pressing down like a heavy hand. Within the Auror office, the lamps flickered uneasily, and even the enchanted quills seemed to write slower than usual. Something in the air had changed. A quiet tension that made every whisper sound like an omen. Harry stood by the window, looking out over the Thames. It had been 3 days since the battle beneath the lake. The world above seemed normal. No tremors, no green skies, no voices from the deep. And yet, he could not shake the feeling that something watched from beyond sight. Hermione entered the office, her robes still damp from the rain outside. She carried a folder under one arm and the familiar glint of worry in her eyes. There's been another sighting, she said without preamble. Harry turned. Where? The Forest of Dean. A Muggle hiker reported seeing green fire between the trees. When the local obliviators went to investigate, they found the soil scorched in a perfect circle. The readings... She paused, searching for the right words. They matched the energy signature from the lake. The silence stretched between them. Then Harry said, He's not gone. Hermione closed the folder. No, whatever happened that night didn't end it. If anything, it spread. The door opened and Thelma Vane entered, her usually sharp face pale and drawn. It's worse than that, she said softly. I've been examining the shards we recovered from the ruins. They're alive. Harry frowned. Alive? Not in the way we understand it, Vane said. She set a small wooden box on the desk and opened it. Inside, a sliver of crystal lay on velvet, faintly glowing, pulsing in rhythm with something unseen. They pulse with magical resonance, responding to proximity. When I brought this one near a simple illumination charm, it tried to absorb the spell. Hermione leaned closer, her expression troubled. Like it's feeding. Vane nodded. Exactly. The curse has fragmented into living fragments, magical parasites that draw energy from whatever they touch. And if the Forest of Dean's circle is anything to judge by, those fragments are beginning to seek each other. Harry stared at the shard, his reflection flickering across its surface. Elias wanted to perfect death. What if this is it, a curse that lives, grows, spreads, until it consumes everything? No one answered. The thought hung heavy in the room. Finally, Hermione straightened. Then we can't stay here waiting for it to gather strength. We find where it's spreading and stop it. Vane hesitated. You may not understand, Miss Granger. The curse is no longer bound to words or wand work. It has become something primal, the magic beneath magic. You can't destroy it. You can only contain it. Harry's gaze hardened. Then that's what we'll do. By evening, they had gathered a small team of aurors and set off for the Forest of Dean. The rain had stopped, but the ground was slick with mud, and a fog hung low over the trees. Harry knew this forest well. He had hidden there once long ago, when another shadow had darkened the world. The memory lent the place an eerie familiarity. They moved in silence through the undergrowth until they reached the clearing described in the report. The air there was unnaturally still, the mist glowing faintly green. Birds avoided the trees, and even the wind seemed to falter before crossing the circle's edge. Hermione whispered a revealing charm. Instantly, tendrils of pale light rose from the soil, twisting and coiling in the air like smoke. It's drawing energy from the forest, she murmured. Everything within a mile radius is weakening. Trees, animals, even the ground itself. Vane knelt, examining the pattern of burn marks. The sigils are the same as Morven's binding runes, but this time they're reversed. Elias inverted his ancestors' work. He's turning containment into expansion. Harry felt the shard in his pocket begin to tremble. He pulled it out. The faint glow inside had deepened, throbbing faster. Hermione stepped back. Harry, it's reacting again. Before he could respond, a voice whispered through the fog. Faint at first, then clearer, layered with too many tones to belong to one person. You cannot destroy what was born from mercy. The mist thickened, coalescing into a vague human shape. It was neither ghost nor man, but something between, a figure woven of green light and drifting ash. The air itself bent around it. Elias, Harry said quietly. The figure's face flickered into focus, serene and sorrowful. You misunderstand me, Potter. I no longer seek to kill. I seek to heal. The world's suffering cries out, and I will silence it forever. Harry lifted his wand. You'll silence everything. Elias smiled, the light around him pulsing brighter. You cannot stop what has already begun. The fragments seek each other. When they unite, the word will be complete, and death will no longer be feared. Vane raised her wand, her voice trembling with both fear and awe. He's not speaking as a man. The curse is speaking through him. Harry aimed straight at Elias. Then I'll speak louder. He fired a disarming charm, but the light passed through Elias harmlessly. The figure shimmered, then vanished into mist. Hermione turned sharply. He's not gone. He's dispersing. Before she could finish, the earth erupted. Roots tore upward from the soil, glowing with green fire. The circle blazed like molten glass, and from its center rose a pillar of light that shot straight into the clouds. "Harry!" Hermione shouted, shielding her face. He felt the pull again, the same invisible grip that had haunted him since the vault. It dragged at his core, calling him toward the pillar. The shard in his hand blazed, and before he could drop it, it melted into light that sank into his skin. Pain lanced through him. Not physical, but deeper, as though something ancient inside him had awakened. For an instant, his vision flooded with green. He saw faces, centuries old, countless lives cut short by the curse's hand. He felt the weight of every death it had ever claimed. Then it was gone. He collapsed to his knees, gasping. Hermione knelt beside him, eyes wide. "Harry, what happened?" He swallowed hard. "It showed me. All of them. Every soul it ever touched." Vane's face had gone ashen. "Then it's chosen you fully now. You are its counterbalance, the only force it recognizes." Harry steadied himself and stood. "Then that's how we stop it. I'll call it back to me." Hermione shook her head in disbelief. "That could kill you." "Maybe," he said. "But if I don't, it'll kill everyone else." He stepped into the circle. The light flared, rising to meet him. He raised his wand, speaking the words he had learned beneath the lake. Not of death, but of release. The ancient syllables cut through the air like a blade. The pillar convulsed, the roots turned to ash. The mist dissolved into drifting sparks, and slowly the clearing fell silent. When it was done, Harry stood at the center, trembling, his wand arm lowered. The last echoes of the curse's voice faded from his mind. Hermione and Vane hurried to his side. "Harry," Hermione whispered, "did it work?" He looked up at the sky where the green light had been. It was gone, replaced by gray clouds and rain. But in the distance, beyond sight, he could feel something faint, something restless. "It's weaker," he said softly, "but not gone. It's gathering somewhere else." Vane's voice was almost a whisper. "Where?" Harry turned toward the north, his scar faintly tingling again for the first time in years. "Scotland," he said.
"Back to Hogwarts." And as the rain began to fall, the three of them stood in the clearing, knowing that the last battle with the curse had only just begun. The sky over the Scottish Highlands was the color of cold steel. When Harry, Hermione, and Thelma Vane arrived at the edge of the Forbidden Forest, snow drifted through the air in slow, uncertain flakes, and Hogwarts loomed in the distance, its towers half veiled by mist. The castle looked peaceful, but Harry could feel the tremor beneath that calm. The curse was here. They had come quietly, traveling by Portkey under the cover of night. Professor McGonagall had been warned only that there was a disturbance in the area, nothing more. The fewer who knew, the safer the school would remain. Now, as they moved through the trees, their breath rising in white clouds, the forest seemed to watch them. Every creak of a branch, every rustle in the leaves sounded like a whisper. "It feels like the night before a storm," Hermione murmured. Vane nodded grimly. "A storm of souls, perhaps. The magic here is restless, drawn to the place where death and life have always danced too closely." Harry glanced toward the castle lights in the distance. "This is where it began for me, where death first tried and failed." Hermione looked at him sharply. "Then maybe it's where it will end."
They pressed onward until they reached the edge of the lake, the Black Lake, now iced over at its edges. Its surface reflected the gray clouds above, and the faint outlines of Hogwarts towers trembled in the rippling water. Hermione crouched, touching the frozen surface. There's movement beneath. Look. Through the thin ice, faint green light pulsed far below, slow, rhythmic, like the beat of a giant heart. Vane whispered, "He's building a vessel. The fragments you dispersed are gathering here." Harry frowned. "Why here?" "Because this is where death lost," Vane said softly. "Where it wants to be avenged." The words hung heavy in the cold air. Suddenly, a deep tremor shook the ground. The lake's surface rippled violently, cracking the thin layer of ice. From the depths, green light surged upward in tendrils that twisted together, forming a vortex that reached toward the sky. Hermione shouted over the rising wind, "He's starting the final convergence." Without hesitation, Harry stepped forward. "Then we end it now." He drew his wand and cast a protective charm around the three of them. The barrier shimmered faintly, holding against the gale, but barely. Thelma Vane raised her voice. "Listen to me. The fragments are not just pieces of the curse. They are fragments of souls. Every person ever killed by the spell left a trace within it. That's what he's awakening." Harry froze, the realization striking like cold water. Then he's not summoning death, he's summoning them. And as if in answer, the air above the lake darkened. Shadows began to take shape. Faint outlines of faces and figures rising from the water like mist. Some were clear, others fractured, all whispering in countless tongues. The light from the vortex intensified until it was almost blinding. At its center, a figure began to form. Elias Morven. But he was no longer merely human. His form shimmered with countless faces flickering across his body. Men, women, children, the ghosts of those the curse had taken. His voice was a chorus now, both beautiful and terrible. "Behold," he said, his voice echoing across the lake, "the sum of all that death has stolen. I will give them peace." Hermione's eyes filled with horror. "Peace? You'll destroy them all." Elias turned his many-faced gaze toward her. "They have lived too long in suffering. You cannot comprehend what it means to exist as fragments. I will make them whole." Harry stepped forward, his wand steady despite the shaking ground. "By erasing them?" Elias's expression flickered. 1,000 faces grimacing, smiling, weeping. "You call it erasure.
I call it release." He raised his hands, and the green light from the lake exploded outward, striking the forest and the castle beyond. In the distance, the towers of Hogwarts flickered as the wards strained to hold. Hermione cried out, casting a counter charm, but the magic of it shattered like glass against the wave of power. "Harry," she shouted, "we can't fight him with ordinary spells." He knew she was right. The curse was older than language, older than wand work. It was born of the first attempt to master death, and he somehow had been bound to it since the day his scar was made. He closed his eyes. The whisper came again, soft and low within his mind. "You are the echo of the undone. Only you can silence the word." He understood then. To end the curse, he would have to call it back into himself, the way it had marked him as a child. He turned to Hermione in vain. "You have to trust me." Hermione grabbed his arm. "Harry, no. You don't know what that will do to you." "I know exactly what it will do," he said quietly. "But this time, I'm choosing it."
Before she could stop him, he stepped beyond the barrier and onto the icy shore. The wind tore at his cloak, the green light painting his face in ghostly hues. He lifted his wand toward the sky. "Elias Morven," he called. "You wanted to perfect the curse, to make death merciful, but death was never yours to command." The figure turned toward him, the chorus of voices faltering. "You are a relic of resistance, Potter. You stood against death once, and for that, it marked you as its own." Harry's scar burned like fire. "Then I'll finish what it started." He raised his wand, but this time he did not speak the killing curse. He spoke the word beneath it. The true root of the spell, the language that had created Avada Kedavra long before it became a weapon. It was not a word of death. It was a word of ending. The sound of it shook the mountains. The light of the lake bent inward, collapsing upon itself. Elias screamed, not in pain but in fury, as the souls bound within him began to unravel, freed from his grasp. One by one, the faces dissolved into light that rose gently into the sky like stars returning home. The storm subsided. The vortex dimmed, and at the center of the lake, Elias Morven's form flickered once more, his voice no longer many but one, soft, broken, almost human again. "Mercy," he whispered. "That was all I wanted." Then he was gone. The lake fell silent, its surface rippling only with the faint reflection of the moon. The green glow faded completely, leaving only darkness and cold. Harry stood motionless, the wand still raised, until Hermione ran to him, her eyes wide with fear. "Harry, talk to me. Are you—" He lowered his arm slowly. "I'm here," he said, though his voice sounded distant even to himself. Thelma Vane joined them, kneeling beside the water. "It's over. The convergence failed. The fragments have dissolved." Hermione looked at Harry's face, pale, drawn, his scar faintly glowing before it dimmed again. "What did you say to him? What word did you use?" Harry stared at the lake for a long moment before answering. "The same word Morven meant to use when he tried to end suffering, the word he twisted by mistake." "And what was it?" Vane asked softly. He turned toward them, the wind stirring his hair, his expression unreadable. "Forgiveness." For a moment the world seemed utterly still, the storm gone, the curse undone, but as they walked back toward the castle through the silent forest, Harry glanced up at the night sky. Far to the north, a faint shimmer glowed on the horizon, not green this time, but pale and silvery, like the memory of light. It followed them all the way to Hogwarts. For the first time in weeks, Hogwarts was quiet. The following morning dawned clear and cold, the kind of morning when the frost clung to every stone and the lake shone like a sheet of glass. The students awoke to an ordinary day, blissfully unaware of how near their world had come to unraveling. Yet within the castle's deepest corridors where few ever walked, shadows of the night before still lingered. Harry, Hermione, and Thelma Vane had been given a small chamber near the old dungeons to rest, but sleep would not come. The air itself hummed with residual magic, faint, harmless but alive. Harry sat by the hearth, staring into the flames as though searching for something within them. The light flickered against his scar, faintly illuminating the thin mark that had bound him to the curse since infancy. Hermione sat across from him, a mug of untouched tea cooling in her hands. "You did it," she said softly. "You really ended it." Harry didn't answer right away. He watched the fire shift from red to gold and back again before speaking. "I ended him. The curse." He hesitated, searching for the right words. The curse isn't gone. It's quieter, but it's still there, everywhere, like the echo of a storm that's passed. Hermione frowned. You think it's still in you? I don't think it ever left. Vane, who had been pacing near the bookshelves, stopped. He's right, she said, her voice low. Magic that ancient doesn't vanish. It binds itself to the living world. When you spoke the word of ending, you changed its nature, but you didn't destroy it. You transfigured it. Hermione looked sharply at her. Into what? Vane's eyes glimmered in the firelight. That, Miss Granger, is what we must now learn. The fire cracked, and for a moment the only sound was the pop of burning wood. Then Harry spoke again. I saw something last night. When I cast the word, I saw them. Every soul the curse had ever touched. They weren't suffering. They were waiting. Waiting? Hermione echoed. He nodded. For release. For someone to see them. Not as victims, but as people. Maybe that's what Morven wanted in the beginning. Not death, not power, just a way to ease pain. He lost control of it, but his intention wasn't evil. Vane's expression softened. Perhaps that's why the curse chose you. You were never its enemy. You were its correction. Hermione reached across the table, touching his hand. Then it's truly over. Harry gave a small, tired smile. As over as anything ever is. But peace, as always, was fleeting. That night, long after the castle had fallen into silence, a sound woke Harry from his uneasy sleep. A low hum, faint but unmistakable. It came from beyond the walls, distant and deep, like a chord struck in the heart of the earth. He rose, pulled on his cloak, and stepped into the corridor. The torches flickered to life as he passed, their light bending strangely against the stone. He followed the sound downward through passages he had not walked in years, until he reached the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets. The snake-etched door loomed before him, cold and massive. He hadn't spoken the word to open it since he was a boy, but now the language came to him easily, as natural as breath. Open, he whispered in Parseltongue. The door groaned and slid aside. Inside, the chamber was just as he remembered, vast, damp, and echoing with the drip of unseen water. The giant statue of Salazar Slytherin stared down from the far wall, its expression unreadable. At the base of the statue, something shimmered, a faint green glow. Harry approached cautiously, wand raised. The light came from a pool of water that had gathered on the stone floor. It was shallow, reflecting the carved ceiling above. But within the reflection, something moved. Not a person, not a creature, but a flicker of memory. A face. Elias Morven's face rippled across the surface like a reflection in wind. Potter, the voice murmured, echoing softly through the chamber. You spoke the word, you changed the curse, but you cannot unmake the nature of man. Harry's grip on his wand tightened. You're dead, Morven. Death, the reflection said with a faint smile, was the first lie we ever told ourselves. What you destroyed was my form, not my purpose. The curse now belongs to every wand that remembers it, every heart that longs for mercy through destruction. The reflection began to fade. Harry took a step closer. What do you mean? But the only answer was a whisper. The word endures. The light in the pool went out. Harry stood in the darkness for a long time, listening to the drip of water. Then, quietly, he whispered a charm and sealed the chamber once more. At dawn, he found Hermione and Vane in the library. Both looked drawn but alert, surrounded by stacks of old texts. I heard it again, he said without preamble. Hermione looked up sharply. The curse? He nodded. In the chamber. Elias's reflection spoke to me. He said the curse wasn't gone, that it lives in memory. Vane's eyes darkened. That is the danger of spells born from emotion. The words themselves are not evil, but the will behind them can reshape the world. If enough people recall it with fear or hatred, the curse could reform, piece by piece. Hermione frowned. You mean it could rebuild itself from memory? Vane nodded slowly. Magic is thought given shape. If thought returns to the word, so too does the word return to power. Harry looked toward the high windows, where the morning light filtered in. Then it's not the curse we need to fight now, it's what people believe about it. The three of them exchanged a look. One part dread, one part understanding. Later that day, Harry walked the grounds alone. Students hurried across the lawns, laughing, carrying books and brooms and all the ordinary burdens of youth. For the first time in years, he felt separate from them. A figure belonging not to the living world, but to its memory. He paused by the lake, watching sunlight glint off the surface. Somewhere beneath that calm water, the remains of the curse lay scattered and still. He drew his wand and whispered softly, "Forgiveness." The word lingered in the air, a breath of warmth in the cold wind. For a moment he thought he saw something beneath the water, not light, not shadow, but peace. Then it was gone. Hermione's voice called from behind him. "Harry, Professor McGonagall wants to see us in her office. She says it's about the archives. Some kind of magical disturbance in the restricted section." He turned, a faint, weary smile crossing his face. "Of course it is." As they walked back toward the castle together, the bell in the astronomy tower began to toll the hour, slow, solemn, echoing across the lake. And in the sound of it, faint as breath, Harry thought he heard something hidden between the chimes. Not a curse this time, but a promise. A whisper carried on the wind, ancient, weary, and kind. The word forgives. The office of Professor McGonagall was dim that evening, the fire burning low, the portraits asleep in their frames. A storm had gathered over the Highlands, and the sound of rain on the windows seemed almost like whispers from another world. Harry, Hermione, and Thelma Vane stood before the headmistress's desk, and for a long moment, no one spoke. At last, McGonagall broke the silence. "Miss Granger tells me there has been an incident." Her sharp gaze flicked to Harry, then to Vane. "You've brought something dark into this castle, and I will have the truth of it." Harry inclined his head. "You already know part of it, Professor. The curse that took so many lives, Avada Kedavra, wasn't born of evil alone. We've discovered its origin, and we've stopped what tried to wake it again." "Stopped?" McGonagall repeated. "Or delayed?" The words struck harder than Harry expected. He exchanged a brief glance with Hermione. "It's quiet now," he said carefully, "but magic like that doesn't die easily. We think something lingers." Vane stepped forward. "Headmistress, we're not here to alarm you,
But the ancient magics beneath Hogwarts are stirring. The castle itself has begun to remember." McGonagall's expression hardened. "Hogwarts remembers many things, few of them pleasant." Hermione held out a folded parchment. "The disturbance in the restricted section." This came from the shelf where the Founder's personal grimoires are kept. It's written in the same language we found on the scroll in Morven's vault. McGonagall took it.
The parchment was yellowed with age, the ink dark and fluid like living shadow. And what does it say?
Hermione hesitated before answering. When the word forgives, the keeper must atone. McGonagall frowned. The keeper? Harry felt the air grow heavier. I think that means me. The castle grew restless that night. The wind moaned through the corridors like voices lost between centuries, and the staircases shifted of their own accord, whispering against the stone. Students reported seeing green reflections in mirrors, shadows where there should have been none. The portraits muttered to one another, refusing to speak when questioned. Harry could feel it, the hum of unseen power, moving like a current through the air. It wasn't hostile, not exactly, but it was aware, watching, waiting. He spent the night walking the corridors, unable to sleep. Each footstep echoed louder than it should have. By the time he reached the entrance hall, dawn was creeping through the high windows. The great doors were ajar, the cold mist from the ground seeping in. He stepped outside. The morning was pale and wet, the sky a wash of silver. Beyond the lake, the forest stood dark and unmoving. But in the center of the grounds, near the old Quidditch pitch, something caught his eye. A faint glow, green gold, like a lantern half buried in fog. Harry approached cautiously, wand drawn. As he neared, the glow brightened, taking shape upon the ground. Lines of light spread outward, forming a circle, runes ancient and trembling, the same pattern that had burned in Morven's chamber. Thelma Vane appeared behind him, her breath misting in the cold air. "It's another seal," she said, awe softening her voice, "but not made by Elias this time." "Then who?" She stared at him. "You." Harry frowned. "I didn't—" "You did, when you spoke the final word," Vane interrupted. "You bound the curse to yourself, but some part of it seeks release. Balance. It's calling to the castle because Hogwarts is where you first defied death. The magic here knows you." Hermione arrived a few moments later, hair windswept, her eyes sharp with concern. "We felt the surge from the library. What's happening?" "The castle's responding to me," Harry said, "or to the curse." Vane pointed at the circle. "It's forming a vessel, not to destroy, but to reveal." The earth within the circle began to shift. Slowly, something rose from the soil. A stone basin, smooth and wide, its edges carved with the serpent motif of Slytherin. It was filled not with water, but with a swirling green mist. Hermione stepped closer. Another memory well? Harry felt a strange pull, stronger than fear, stronger even than curiosity. The mist swirled faster as he approached, and then, without warning, it pulled him in. He fell through a rush of color and sound, tumbling through time. When the spinning stopped, he found himself standing in a vast, dimly lit hall. The air smelled of rain and stone. Before him stood a man, tall, hooded, his robes stitched with silver thread. His face was hidden, but his voice was calm, ancient. "You are the keeper?" the man said. Harry looked down. His wand was gone. His hands glowed faintly like pale light in darkness. "Who are you?" "The one who named the word," the figure replied. "Ashkar Morven." Harry's breath caught. "You created it?" "I shaped it," Morven said. "But it was the hearts of men that gave it purpose. I sought to end pain, to make death gentle. Instead, I forged a door through which cruelty could walk." He lifted his head, and Harry saw his face. Not monstrous, not even angry, but weary beyond measure. "You changed it," Morven said. "You spoke the word as it was meant to be spoken, not as a weapon but as forgiveness. But forgiveness demands atonement. What kind of atonement? Morven's eyes glowed faintly green. The curse was born from mercy corrupted by fear. To end it fully, the keeper must surrender what the curse cannot touch. Harry frowned. And what's that? Hope, Morven whispered. The words struck something deep within him, and before he could respond, the vision began to fade. Wait, Harry shouted. Tell me how. Morven's voice echoed, fading like a wind through a graveyard. When the shadow rises again, and it will, speak not to death, but to life. Then everything went black. He woke on the ground outside the circle, gasping. Hermione was kneeling beside him, pale with worry. Harry, you were gone for 10 minutes. We couldn't reach you. He sat up slowly, the world spinning around him. The stone basin had crumbled into dust. What did you see? Vane asked. Morven, Harry said quietly. He said the curse will rise again, but not as we knew it. It'll come as despair in those who have lost hope. Hermione's expression darkened. That means anyone could become its vessel. Vane nodded slowly. Then, we must ensure the word remains one of peace, not vengeance. As long as people believe in mercy, the curse cannot reform. Harry looked toward the castle, its towers glowing gold in the morning sun. Then that's what we'll protect, not from magic, but from forgetting. The wind stirred the grass, carrying the faint scent of rain and stone. For the first time, Harry felt the weight of peace, not as an ending, but as a duty. He stood, brushing dust from his cloak. It began here, with a word twisted by fear. It'll end here, with one spoken in hope. Hermione smiled faintly. And if the curse ever returns? Harry's gaze lingered on the horizon, where the dark forest met the sky. Then I'll be here, he said, because that's what the Keeper does. And as the morning light spilled across the grounds of Hogwarts, the last echoes of green faded from the stones, leaving behind only quiet and the faint whisper of a promise that would outlast the ages. The weeks that followed were the calmest Hogwarts had seen in years. No green light flickered beneath the lake, no whispers echoed through the halls. Classes continued as usual, owls came and went from the towers, and laughter once more filled the courtyards. Yet to Harry, it all felt strangely fragile, as though the peace itself were holding its breath. He remained at the castle longer than he'd planned. McGonagall had asked him to stay a while longer, her tone brisk, but her eyes concerned. Hermione too stayed, spending long hours in the library with Thelma Vane, translating what few fragments of Ashkar Morven's writings they had recovered. But even among the dusty scrolls and firelight, Hermione's gaze would drift toward the window at times, as if expecting to see the faint shimmer of green return. Harry took to walking the grounds in the evenings. The castle had always had a voice of its own. The sigh of the wind in the towers, the quiet hum of centuries-old magic. But lately it seemed to speak differently to him. The stones recognized him now, or so it felt. Every step echoed with the weight of history, and every shadow seemed to bend just slightly toward him. One evening, as twilight bled across the lake, he reached the edge of the forbidden forest. The air was thick with mist, and the trees loomed like ancient sentinels. He had not meant to go far, only to think. But something in the air called to him, faint and familiar. A whisper carried through the branches. He paused, wand at the ready. Then he heard it clearly. A single word, soft and sorrowful. Forgiveness.
It was his own voice. Harry turned sharply, the mist curling around his cloak. The forest ahead seemed to deepen, shadows shifting like waves. And then he saw a figure among the trees, pale, cloaked, its face hidden. "Elias!" Harry breathed. The figure stepped forward. It was not Elias Morven. The man's hair was silver, his eyes dark and steady, neither cruel nor kind, but heavy with age. "Not Elias," the stranger said. "A remnant, a thought left behind." Harry's grip on his wand tightened. "A remnant of what?" "The word," the man replied. "You purified it, Potter. You made it what it was always meant to be. But words are never still. They live in those who speak them." Harry frowned. "Then what are you doing here?" The man's gaze turned toward the castle. "The curse has changed form. It no longer hungers for death. Now it seeks despair, to feed on hopelessness. Every grief, every loss, it gathers strength from them. It hides where hearts are weakest." Harry felt a cold weight settle in his chest. "And you want me to stop it?" The stranger inclined his head. "You are the keeper, the one who bears its balance. But you cannot fight despair as you fought death. It cannot be struck down. It must be healed." Harry's throat tightened. "Healed?" The man's form began to fade, the mist swallowing him. "You will know when the time comes. The word is yours now, but it will test you as it tested me." Before Harry could speak, the forest darkened. The figure vanished, leaving only silence and the rustle of distant leaves. By the time he returned to the castle, the corridors were empty. He found Hermione waiting for him in the great hall, where the candles floated low and weary. "You're pale," she said, rising as he entered. "What happened?" He hesitated. "Something, or someone, spoke to me in the forest. Said the curse isn't gone, only changed. It feeds on despair now." Hermione's expression hardened. "Then it's not a curse anymore, it's something worse. A contagion of grief." Vane joined them, stepping from the shadows. "We've seen it before. Magic that lives on emotion. It seeps into those who suffer, offering peace at a price." Harry sank into a chair. "And the price?" "The will to go on," Vane said simply. Hermione pressed her hands against the table. "We have to find where it's starting." Vane's eyes flicked toward the upper hall. "It already has. There's been a student taken to the hospital wing. Miss Elspeth Caro. She hasn't spoken since dawn. The matron says she's alive, but her magic is sleeping." Harry stood. "Show me." The hospital wing was dim, the lamps burning low. The girl lay motionless on the nearest bed, her skin pale, her breath shallow but steady. Around her floated faint threads of silver light. Fragile, wavering, almost invisible. Madame Pomfrey looked up as they entered, worry etched deep on her face. "I've never seen anything like it. It's not a curse, not sickness. It's as if she's forgotten how to wake." Hermione cast a revealing charm, and the light threads flared faintly green. "It's connected," she whispered. "The same resonance as the curse, but altered." Harry stepped closer, gazing down at the girl. Her expression was peaceful, too peaceful, like someone who had simply let go. He reached out and took her hand. Her skin was cold. The hum of faint magic tingled against his fingers. "Can she hear us?" he asked quietly. Vane shook her head. "No, but she can hear you." The Keeper's touch binds both worlds, living and beyond. Harry swallowed hard. "Then maybe I can bring her back." He closed his eyes and whispered the word that had changed everything. "Forgiveness." The air trembled. The faint green light surrounding the girl flickered, then dimmed. Harry felt something pass through him, not pain but sorrow, deep and old. He saw for an instant her memories. Laughter in the courtyard, letters unopened, a grief she had hidden too long. The magic that had taken her was no enemy. It was comfort, too kind, too tempting. He whispered again, "It's all right. You're not alone." The light faded, the girl stirred, her breath deepening. Slowly her eyes fluttered open. Hermione gasped softly. "You did it." Vane's gaze was steady but troubled. "No, she did. You merely reminded her how." Harry looked down at his hand, still trembling faintly with green light. "Then that's what the curse has become. A whisper that tempts those who've lost hope." Hermione shivered. Its mercy twisted again. But quieter this time, cleverer. Vane nodded grimly. "And it will grow, one heart at a time, until the world forgets the difference between peace and surrender." That night, as rain beat against the windows, Harry stood alone on the astronomy tower. The castle below lay silent, the lake dark as obsidian. He could feel the new magic pulsing faintly beneath the world. Patient, watchful. He understood now what Morven had meant. To heal a curse born of despair, he would need more than spells. He would need to remind the world of something stronger than fear. He lifted his wand, tracing a single line of light into the sky. It shimmered silver, not green, and spread across the clouds until it became a symbol, simple, soft, and human. A sign of hope. Far below, students began to wake and look from their windows, whispering in wonder. And as the light faded, Harry whispered into the dark, "You will not win." From the forest, faint and distant, came the echo of an answer. Neither threat nor promise, but something between. "We shall see." The days grew shorter. Winter had come to Hogwarts, and snow blanketed the castle grounds. In soft silence, the air was still, but the quiet held a weight to it, like the hush before a storm that all could sense, though none could name. Since the night he drew light across the sky, Harry had felt the castle pulse differently. It was subtle, almost gentle, yet unmistakable. The walls whispered with new warmth. The corridors seemed brighter, even when torches burned low. Still, beneath the peace, there lingered a tension, the faint pulse of something vast and sleeping, waiting to be stirred. Hermione spent her days in the library beside Thelma Vane, deciphering the remnants of Morven's scattered writings. Parchments covered their table like fallen leaves. Each fragment hinted at the same truth, that the word of mercy had changed the curse, yet not destroyed it. It had woven itself into the world like root and vine, growing quietly, unseen. And Harry, though restless, found purpose again in teaching. McGonagall had asked him to instruct the older students in advanced defensive magic, spells for protection, for strength, but also for understanding. "You more than anyone know," she had said, "that true defense lies not in attack, but in knowing when not to strike." So he taught. He spoke to them not of death or curses, but of resilience, of courage born from compassion. And in those moments, with the young faces before him and their wands raised with wonder, he almost believed that the shadows would not return. Almost. One evening near midwinter, when the castle slept beneath the snow, Hermione came running to the classroom where Harry lingered late. Her hair was wild, her eyes bright with alarm. "Harry," she gasped, "come quickly. Something's happening in the Great Hall." He followed without question. The doors to the hall were open, light spilling through them in rippling waves. Inside, the floating candles burned green instead of gold, their flames flickering as though caught in a strong wind. The long tables were empty of food, the air thick with hum and echo. At the center of the hall, where the enchanted ceiling mirrored the storm outside, a shape of light was forming, slow, deliberate, magnificent. It was not a man this time, nor a ghost. It was a figure wrought entirely of shifting color, green, silver, and faint gold. The light pulsed like a heartbeat. Students had gathered in the doorway, murmuring fearfully, but McGonagall held them back. Her wand was drawn, though she had not yet cast. "What is it?" she demanded as Harry entered. "The curse," Thelma Vane said from beside her, "or what it has become. It's not attacking, it's manifesting." The figure turned toward them. Though its face was featureless, its presence was neither cold nor cruel. It seemed to look upon them with something like sorrow. A voice filled the hall, soft, layered, ageless. "You have changed the word," it said. "You have turned death to mercy. But mercy must still judge." The sound was not loud, yet it vibrated in their bones. Harry stepped forward. "Who are you?" "I am what remains," said the light. "I am the echo of the word, before it was spoken in anger. You called me when you forgave." Hermione's eyes widened. "It's not the curse at all. It's what's left of it, the part that was never evil." Vane's voice trembled. "A sentience formed from magic older than time, a consciousness born from intent itself." The figure's gaze, or what felt like one, shifted to Harry. "Keeper," it said, "you bear both the wound and the cure. But the balance is broken still. Despair spreads in hidden hearts. The word can no longer bind what men will not heal." Harry took a step closer. "Then tell me how? Tell me what I have to do." The figure extended a hand of light, and as it touched his chest, warmth flowed through him. Pure, unearthly, almost unbearable. Images flashed before his eyes, the dead from the curse's long reign, the living who mourned them, the countless small griefs that fed despair. In quiet corners of the world, he saw it all. "The word cannot end sorrow," the voice said, "but it can teach those who live to bear it. That is your task, Keeper. You must teach them what even magic cannot mend." Then the light began to fade. "Wait," Harry said urgently. "Where do I begin?" The answer came like a whisper in his heart. "Begin where fear was born." And then the light was gone, leaving the great hall dark and trembling. The candles flickered back to gold, and the enchanted ceiling cleared to reveal the stars. McGonagall lowered her wand. "What in Merlin's name was that?" Harry's voice was quiet, distant. The last echo of the curse, and maybe the first echo of something new. The following morning, Harry packed for London. Hermione tried to persuade him otherwise, but his mind was set. "If I'm to follow its message," he said, "I have to go back to where it all began. The place where fear first met me." She understood at once. Godric's Hollow. He nodded. And what came after? The snow fell thicker as he traveled south. By the time he reached the village, night had fallen, and the old churchyard was blanketed in white. The stars were sharp above the frozen trees. He walked through the gate in silence, past the rows of graves, until he reached the one he sought, Lily and James Potter. He stood for a long time, the wind whispering softly through the branches. He could still feel the faint hum beneath the earth, the place where love had conquered death, where a mother's mercy had changed the shape of the world. He knelt and whispered, "It's done, Mum. It's different now. The curse won't win." The wind stilled. The snow around the grave shimmered faintly, as though something beneath the frost had heard him. He closed his eyes and spoke again. Not a spell, not a command, but the word that had saved him once and remade the darkness. Forgiveness. A warmth spread through the air, melting the frost where it touched. For an instant, Harry felt a hand upon his shoulder, light as breath, kind as memory. And in that quiet moment, the curse that had haunted wizard kind for centuries seemed at last to rest. When he returned to Hogwarts, spring was already beginning to stir in the fields. The lake no longer reflected green, but clear blue. The forbidden forest whispered softly in the thawing wind. In the weeks that followed, the story spread of a light seen over Godric's Hollow, of snow that bloomed into flowers, of a peace that settled over the wizarding world like dawn after endless night. The killing curse remained. Yes, its words, still taught as forbidden, its memory never erased. But it had changed. The green light no longer answered easily to hatred. Its power faltered before pity, stumbled before remorse, and though few knew why, those who had once feared the word began to speak its name with less dread, as though some deep part of the world had forgiven itself. One evening, long after sunset, Harry stood again at the highest tower, looking out over the darkening hills. The castle slept, the stars glimmered. Hermione joined him, her expression peaceful for the first time in months. "It's over," she said quietly. Harry smiled faintly. "No, but it's better." Below them, the lake rippled under moonlight, and the reflection of the stars shimmered like countless souls at rest. For the first time in his life, Harry felt the silence of peace, not empty, not waiting, but full. And somewhere far beyond the reach of magic, the word that had begun in darkness now shone like light through the ages. Forgiveness. Spring unfurled slowly across the highlands, wrapping the world in green once more. The ice upon the lake melted into glass, and the first flowers pushed through the dark soil of the castle grounds. The shadow that had haunted Hogwarts was gone, or at least asleep. Yet Harry Potter, now both hero and keeper of an ancient word, found no rest. Peace was not silence. It was responsibility. He had begun writing again. Each evening after lessons with the older students, he would retreat to the small study beside the astronomy tower and fill parchment after parchment with thoughts he scarcely dared to speak aloud. He wrote of Morven and the word, of what forgiveness had cost and what it had restored. He wrote for the future, for a time when someone else might need to remember that mercy was not weakness, but the truest kind of strength. Hermione and Thelma Vane worked beside him, building what they called the Codex of Origins, a record of all they had uncovered about the unforgivable curses and the ancient magic that had birthed them. Together they labored late into the night, the soft scratch of quills mingling with the sigh of wind outside the windows. One evening, as the candles burned low, Vane spoke without looking up from her scroll. "Do you ever wonder, Mr. Potter, what would happen if the word vanished entirely? If no one remembered it at all?" Harry leaned back in his chair. "I've thought about it, but forgetting would be worse than remembering. The curse taught us what happens when power is divorced from compassion. Memory keeps that lesson alive." Hermione smiled faintly. "So even Avada Kedavra has a purpose, in its way." Harry nodded. "Every shadow needs its opposite. It's when we pretend darkness doesn't exist that it begins to grow again. But peace, though fragile, rarely lasts forever." The first sign came in the early weeks of May. The owls grew restless, circling the towers at odd hours. The portraits whispered among themselves, their painted faces uneasy. Even the ghosts seemed to keep to the lower halls, as though avoiding something unseen. One afternoon, Neville Longbottom appeared at Harry's door, his face pale. "There's something you should see," he said. They went together to the greenhouses. The air inside was warm and fragrant with earth and herbs, but near the far wall, a cluster of plants had withered overnight. Their leaves had turned not brown but black, veins glowing faintly green. "It started this morning," Neville said softly. "The roots are untouched. It's like the life's been persuaded to stop." Harry crouched beside the withered soil. The scent of magic hung there, faint, familiar. "Not corruption," he murmured. "Resignation." Neville frowned. "Meaning?" "It's the word again," Harry said quietly. "But not from outside. This came from the earth itself." Hermione arrived soon after, followed by Thelma Vane. When she saw the blackened leaves, her eyes widened. "It's spreading," she whispered. "The curse was never meant to end with wands. It has taken root in the world's grief. Even the land remembers." Harry straightened. "Then we teach it hope again." Vane gave a wan smile. "You talk as if the soil can hear you." "Maybe it can," Harry replied. "Magic listens even when we think it doesn't." That night he stood once more at the edge of the lake, wand in hand, and spoke the word, not as a spell, but as a prayer. The water rippled outward in gentle circles, the moonlight dancing upon its surface. The next morning, Neville found the greenhouse plants blooming again, but deeper still, in the dark caverns beneath the school, something ancient stirred. Weeks passed. Summer approached. Students laughed in the courtyards and exams filled the air with tension, yet below the surface of joy, a subtle unease lingered. A few students complained of dreams, green light, soft whispers, a voice promising rest, the same promise that had once drawn Elias Morven beyond life's veil. Harry gathered Hermione and Vane in the library late one evening. "It's trying again," he said, quietly this time, "through dreams." Hermione bit her lip. The word of forgiveness changed the curse's shape. It can't kill anymore, but it can tempt. That's how despair works. It whispers instead of strikes. Vane looked toward the shelves, where the codex lay open. "The world doesn't need another battle, Mr. Potter. It needs remembrance. You can't fight a whisper with a wand." "Then how?" he asked. She met his eyes. "By living the lesson. By turning the word from legend into practice. Show them what mercy looks like when it walks in the world." Harry fell silent. He thought of his students, of how they looked to him, not just for defense, but for direction. Perhaps that was how it began, not with spells, but with example. The next morning he called a gathering in the great hall. Every student and professor stood beneath the enchanted ceiling, where clouds drifted lazily in the early light. Harry's voice carried across the chamber, calm and steady. "You've all been taught that some words are unforgivable," he began. "That magic can wound so deeply it leaves no room for redemption. But there's another truth, one we often forget. Magic, like people, can change." He saw the curiosity, the unease, the whispers among the students. "There was a spell once," he continued, "that sought to control death. It failed because it was born from fear. But fear can become understanding. The same word that once destroyed can, if spoken with compassion, heal." Hermione's gaze met his from across the hall. Thelma Vane stood beside her, silent, her expression unreadable. Harry lowered his wand. Remember this: power and mercy are not enemies. If you carry one, you must guard it with the other. That is how magic endures, not in victory, but in grace. When he finished, the hall was utterly still. Then slowly, McGonagall began to applaud. The sound spread, first among the professors, then the students. It wasn't raucous or wild, it was reverent, like the quiet applause given at the end of a great symphony. In that moment, Harry knew Morven's legacy had finally changed shape. The curse's shadow would never vanish entirely, but it had been gentled, woven into the world's balance. No longer a wound, but a warning. As summer deepened, Harry prepared to leave Hogwarts once more. The train would take the students home, the halls would fall silent until autumn, and he, at last, would return to the life he had set aside. But the castle seemed reluctant to let him go. When he walked its corridors one final time, the portraits bowed, and the suits of armor stood to attention as he passed. At the great doors, Hermione met him. "Do you think it's really over?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Nothing ever is, but it's at peace, and that's enough." They walked together down the long path toward the gate. The lake shimmered behind them, and above the towers a single phoenix, Fawkes, or his kin perhaps, circled once in the sky before vanishing into sunlight. As they reached the end of the grounds, Harry turned for one last look. The castle gleamed beneath the bright summer sky, its windows flashing gold. For the first time, the air around it felt wholly alive, not burdened by memory, but filled with promise. Hermione touched his arm. "You never told me," she said softly, "when Morven's echo spoke to you. What did he call you?" Harry looked toward the distant horizon, where green fields met the glittering sea. "He called me the Keeper of the Word," he said, "but I think he was wrong." "Oh, I think we all are," Harry replied. "Every one of us who remembers that mercy is stronger than death." They stood together in the sunlight, the sound of the train in the distance, the wind carrying the scent of spring across the hills. And somewhere, deep within the heart of Hogwarts, the stones whispered one final word, not of darkness or power, but of promise everlasting: forgiveness. The years rolled onward, carrying the world into gentler days. Yet the story of the killing curse, the word that had once shaken wizardkind, did not fade into myth as so many feared it would. It lingered, not as a weapon, but as a lesson, whispered in classrooms and recorded in the codex that Harry, Hermione, and Thelma Vane had completed. In time, young witches and wizards spoke of Avada Kedavra, not with terror, but with solemn understanding, as one speaks of storms long past that still shaped the land they leave behind. Harry himself lived quietly in the years that followed. He returned to Godric's Hollow for a season where the hills rolled soft beneath the clouds and the wild flowers grew thick around his parents' grave. There he built a small cottage, simple, unassuming, and filled it with books, parchment, and the quiet hum of thought. The world no longer demanded a savior. It needed a storyteller, one who would remember how light was born from the shadow. But even peace has its echoes. Sometimes, in the hour before dawn, Harry would wake to a faint whisper threading through the stillness, a voice that was not a voice, a murmur beneath the skin of the world. It did not frighten him. It only reminded him that some magics do not end when their stories do. They become part of the world's breath. He often wrote late into the night, quill scratching softly against parchment. The firelight would flicker across the old lightning-shaped scar on his forehead. now pale and faint, more memory than mark. His writing spoke not of victory or heroism, but of mercy and the burden of understanding. And though few would ever read those words, they carried a power deeper than any spell. Hermione visited often, her hair streaked with silver now, her eyes still sharp as ever. She had become headmistress of Hogwarts, though she confessed it sometimes felt strange to sit at McGonagall's old desk. Together they would sit by the hearth, speaking softly of their youth, of battles, of friends gone, of what they had learned too late, and what they had learned just in time. One winter's evening, as the snow fell thick outside the windows, Hermione asked him quietly, "Do you ever wonder if the curse could return?" Harry looked into the fire. "No," he said after a moment. "Not as it was. It lives on, yes, but as something different. The word still exists, but now it listens before it strikes. Its magic has been taught to feel regret." Hermione smiled faintly. "That sounds like something you'd say." He laughed softly. "Maybe it's something we all needed to learn." When she left that night, the snow had ceased. The moon hung low and the world was silver with stillness. Harry stood in the doorway, watching her figure fade into the distance. Then he turned back inside, sat at his desk, and began another letter. This one addressed to the next generation. To those who will read this when I am gone, know that words are alive. They change with those who speak them. Once, a word of mercy became a word of death, and the world learned fear from its echo, but even the darkest word can be taught to love again. That is the burden and the gift of magic. It reflects the heart of its caster. If you ever stand where I once stood, facing something that seems beyond redemption, remember this: power without compassion will always destroy. But mercy, true mercy, asks more courage than any wand can give. It demands you see even your enemy as someone who could have been you. Do not chase the end of pain. Chase understanding instead. That is where hope hides. H. Potter. He folded the parchment, sealed it with wax, and set it upon the windowsill where the morning sun would find it. Years passed. The cottage aged gently, its stones worn smooth by wind and time. Children from the village sometimes crept near, daring one another to peek through the windows of the wizard's house. They found no curses, no traps, only shelves heavy with books, a cold hearth, and the lingering scent of parchment and tea. It was Hermione who found him one quiet afternoon. He sat in his chair by the fire, a faint smile still upon his face, his hand resting on a quill that had long since cooled. On the table beside him lay an open book, a single word written upon its final page: forgiveness. Hermione closed the book gently. No tears fell, only a soft exhale, as though even grief knew it must tread lightly here. They buried him beneath the yew tree near the cottage, where sunlight filtered through the branches in golden threads. Wizards and witches came from every corner of the land to pay their respects. Students grown old, friends from battles past, those who had once been strangers but had lived because of him. No grand speeches were made, no spells cast. Only quiet gratitude. Thelma Vane spoke last. He was the keeper, she said, but not of the curse, of its cure. He taught us that magic begins where cruelty ends, and that every ending, if met with mercy, can be a beginning. When the crowd dispersed, Hermione remained. She placed a single lily upon the grave and whispered, "Sleep well, old friend. The world remembers." And it did.
For in the years that followed, stories of the Keeper of the Word spread across wizarding Britain. Children learned them as fables, scholars studied them as history, and every generation found something new within the tale. Some said that when despair grew too heavy in the world, the trees around Hogwarts would whisper in a language no one knew, and the air would warm as if touched by unseen kindness. One summer evening, long after those who had known him were gone, a young witch stood beside the same lake where the final light of the curse had once risen. She was a student of Hogwarts, curious, bright, and brave. She had read all she could of Harry Potter, not the chosen one, but the Keeper. As the sun dipped below the mountains, she lifted her wand and whispered a word she had never been taught in class, a word she'd found carved into a forgotten page in the library's restricted section. Forgiveness. The water rippled, glowing faintly gold beneath the fading light. She smiled, not in triumph, but in understanding. Far beneath the surface, where silence slept and magic dreamed, the old power stirred. Gentle, no longer a curse, but a blessing, and the world exhaled as if at last content. Above the lake, the evening star burned bright, and for those who listened closely, the whisper returned, not as warning, nor sorrow, but as truth enduring through all time. Even the darkest word can become light if the heart that speaks it means peace.